Hello everybody, this is Diane. We're going to try something a little different today. I'm actually standing in my kitchen dining room area and my ironing board here, my dining room table right here. I have piles of, see if I can move that for you. I have piles of vintage sheets, some embroidered pieces, small pieces and larger pieces, just some pretty linens, lace bits, little fabric bits, and handkerchiefs. I'm going to turn you back here because our attention will be here on the ironing board. I'm sorry for moving you around like that. This is what we're going to make. I wanted to get out my linens and make a journal cover. And I have so many of them. I'm going to make 3 journals with these linens. I wanted to focus on an embroidered piece on the flap and then have various other pieces on the cover. And so I'm going to make 2 more covers. I already made this one. I was kind of feeling my way, figuring out what I wanted to do. I wasn't following anybody's plan. And I'm going to tell you mine. I'm going to tell you how I did it. I'm not being precise. I'm not measuring. And I may have to make an alteration on this because this part ended up being wider than I wanted it to. But I don't want to really cut off part of that handkerchief, but maybe just a little bit, just to make it so it's not quite so wide. But we'll see. We're going to figure that out later. So let me just show you what we've got here. Get that in there so you can see it. So there's a vintage, I started with this, and I based the size on this piece right here. And this was a dresser scarf that had 2 of these, one on each end. And it is quite wide, so I had to make the journal wide. And I do have my ruler here. It's 11.5 inches, so that's pretty wide. And I could have trimmed off some of it and made it not so tall, but I liked these curved edges, so I left them. And this is a vintage sheet right here, and another scrap of fabric there. And then I just applied, I put this large piece of a handkerchief, a vintage handkerchief. It's not the entire handkerchief, I just cut it here and put that there, and then I just started layering pieces. There's some eyelet fabric here, this gorgeous textural lace right there, an old doily. It's all vintage except for maybe this piece here. So I just kept adding till I liked the effect. There's a little bit of embroidery here. And so I'm going to sneeze. So I sewed all of that down. I just pinned it down and sewed it down. And then I added a layer of a thin quilt batting like this. Just a cotton quilt batting. And I added another piece of a vintage sheet. You could also make this a patchwork, just whatever pieces you have. So you don't have to have sheet, embroidery, linens. You don't have to have all this. Just use whatever fabrics you have. So now, and I did put a piece of a file folder here to give it a spine that I can sew into. I have made a fabric journal where I didn't have anything sturdy in there, but I wanted to try it with this. So that meant that determines the length of this, and I should have put it up here a little bit further, I think. But we will make it work. And then I sewed these 2 strips of fabric together and then folded it in half so it's doubled. And this will be the wraparound. I just sewed it to the back, and then it will have journal pages in it, of course, to fluff it up. And then you just wrap this around and secure it. So let's make another one. I'll show you the pieces that I'm considering. I have this piece. And this one is almost 8, so that would be a narrower book, or not so tall. This one doesn't belong here because I want to scan that in. Hopefully I'm going to learn how to make digitals. But I have this one that I could use, and I have this one. And these are smaller. I learned my lesson with that great big one. So let's start with this one. I have a heavy piece of, I guess it's muslin, but it's heavier. And I don't know where I got it. It does have a finished edge. It's not a hem, but it's a nice finished edge. So that's what I used to put the edge of my doily up against, so that this edge is already all finished. And this can wrap around the back. It doesn't have to be this entire thing on the flap. I just want to even it up because it's got a notch in it. Okay. So now I want to make sure that the length of this piece of muslin is good. So I'm going to fold this flap over to about the depth that I want. And I'll fold this up to meet it, almost meet it, not quite. And tuck it in under there, and then I will have a spine. So let's pull it. So this book could end up being about like that, which is still 8 inches, so that's still bigger than if you fold a piece of scrapbook paper, 12 by 12 paper in half, it's only 6 inches, so it's still going to be a wide book. So I am going to make this narrower. Just going to cut right here and tear it. Okay, so there's lavender, blue, and pink in this embroidery. I'm going to start with, let's look at the handkerchiefs, the vintage handkerchiefs. This one might be the best one for the colors that we have. I don't know how this angle is going to work. Hope you can see what I'm doing. There's some ballerinas on this handkerchief, but can you see them? They'll end up getting covered, I'm sure. At least parts of them. And now I'm just going to start layering. So I want some sheet. I like this one. And this will go underneath the doily or the dresser scarf, and it will have, so the corners will be covered in sheet. And for this one, I covered it in where's the sheet? I covered it in this pretty little rosebud pattern, and you can see pieces of it. It would have been showing all here, but I put another strip here just to add some interest. So this would have been all this sheet visible if I hadn't put that strip of fabric there. But there's some more of it here and here, so you get glimpses of it. You have to learn to be okay with covering up things that you like when you're doing layering. Otherwise, you're not gonna accomplish anything. I had to get past that. And that, you know, in paper too, when you're layering paper, laces, whatever it is you're layering, you do have to be okay with covering some things up. Just not your favorites, maybe. My ironing board is making noises. I apologize. Every time I press down on it, it creaks. So this handkerchief is so sheer that you can see the pattern of the sheet underneath it, and I love that. Okay, so we have the background. This is the base, the heavy muslin. This is the background. We have our doily and we have our handkerchief. Now let's just start adding things we like. Get these up here where I can reach them. I have this pretty doily. And I just start laying things down and moving them around and rearranging them until I'm satisfied. This is a piece of lace which is not vintage, but it's pretty. I want to add a little more embroidery, excuse me, for my hoarseness. I'm sorry. You know, I've been in my house, barely talking to anybody. I think the only time I talk to anybody is when I do a video. Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me get a drink. Hopefully that'll help a little bit. I talk to my kids, but usually it's texting. I don't talk on the phone much at all. If I want to talk to my mom, I call her because she doesn't text. But the point is, I don't use my voice very much unless I'm doing a video. So we had today's Sunday, we had our church service, our online. Our pastor has a message for us, and his wife, who is a marvelous pianist and great musician, a violinist, she selects music, songs. She selects the hymns for our for our services. But now she finds the videos for the hymns with lyrics posted showing on the screen so that we can sing along. And she just chooses a song that goes with the message, and there were 4 songs. So they're up there before the sermon goes live. So I listened to the songs. I didn't sing along. I'm just in my house by myself, which so I could sing along, but I didn't. Okay, I've got lots of lace. I want to add some fabric. I do want to let some of that pillowcase show on its own. What do we have for fabric? And then we have the message, the sermon. And he told us that we are going to continue having our services online for the month of April. And that made me very emotional because it's a whole other month, and it just all of a sudden made me feel alone. Other people have their families, not all. I mean, there are other widows in our church. I'm not the only one. But they have people in their home that they can have online church with, you know what I mean? Let's see, I need some stuff down here. But I'll be fine. It just kind of surprised me that it's not for 2 more weeks, it's for another month. And it just made me wonder, how long is this going to go on? You know, this whole thing, not just the church thing, but our country, the world really, but how long are the restrictions going to apply in our country? I understand we have to do it until we're safe. I do understand that. But God is in control, and He has not given us the spirit of fear. It says so in the Bible. But He has given us a spirit of love and confidence. I'm avoiding hearts because I don't really want to fuss with which way I want to orient the hearts. Well, I've got these pretty pieces here that I can incorporate. It's a nice wide eyelet. I think it came off of I don't know, it came off of something. It was gathered up here. Makes me think of a bed skirt, but it might not be that deep. So where shall we put this? I do have laces in my craft room, so I might add like a strip of lace on something, but I didn't bring that out with me. I have enough stuff out here. This is just a line of stitching. I think it's supposed to be the cross stitch side out. It's just a curly Q. Cut it off of something. I know you get to hear my clock when I'm in my craft room, but it is right here in this room with me now. It's actually sitting on top. There's a shelf over my refrigerator, and it's sitting on top of that until I get a bookshelf that I can put it on. Okay. I'm just going to have to cover that ballerina because there's this expanse that doesn't have stuff on it. Put that there. You can see part of her. I think we're going to go with this, and then once I have all of this stuff sewn down, I can add more, like a strip of lace here or whatever. Let's put this. This is an unfinished edge of lace, so I'll probably still want to put a strip of lace over that. I was going to bring my pins out, and I didn't, of course. Let me go grab them. So I'm just gonna pin these pieces down, and then off camera I will take them to my sewing machine and just kind of sew everything down, and then baste around the edges. Any edges that didn't get sewn, I will baste around them. So once I get this pinned on, we're going to move on to a piece that I had already layered. Oh darn, I was going to sew it. I was going to sew it and be able to move on to the next stage with you, but I didn't sew it. We're going to move on to the next stage anyway, so I can show you the next step. I'm even thinking about making a couple extra covers and just selling the covers, because I do have a lot of materials to do this with, but it just depends on if I feel like making more once I get 3 done. Once I get my covers made, I know I'm going to want to start on the pages. But we'll see. Maybe let me know if you think you would be interested in purchasing a cover. So I'm pinning all right through the applique pieces, the sheet, and the muslin. Pinning through all the layers, and I will sew all of the layers at the same time. And you can do this in any style you want. You can use bright colors. You can use vintage, like the vintagey brownie colors, like no color at all, just have cream and white and tan and stuff like that. Just whatever you have, whatever supplies you have. I just watched a video from Stacy Carpenter at, I forgot, my type A girl or something like that. Anyway, I just watched one of her videos. It's an older one, a few months old anyway, and she made a fabric cover with batik. And she loves batik. It's her favorite. I think it was actually a hardback cover, but she covered it with fabric. Anyway, you could make it with batik, and boy, you can get lots of colors with that. So you can take this, what I'm doing, and turn it into whatever style you like. So this is all pinned down. The next thing would be for me to go and use my zigzag stitch on most of it and sew it down. So here's what I meant to have already sewn. I have this other one with a lot of blues with this Morning Glory design here. I put some lace there, a little crochet, like a filet crochet right there. The sheet is actually, instead of a sheet, I used a pillowcase. So this was the hem of the pillowcase. I cut off the top part, and because it's got the pretty border there, and then the scattered flowers. And I might want to put something here. I don't really like to talk on the phone, and I don't think my sisters do either, but I was talking to my sisters yesterday, but it was on our sisters chat group on Facebook. So again, no voices, but I may have to just call somebody. Just so I can hear another voice. There. It doesn't look quite so empty. So, this was supposed to have been sewn together, but I'm gonna show you the next steps, and then I'll have to kind of take it apart and take the next step apart and do it again. Just removing those bits off of my ironing board, and I have my quilt batting right here. Just seeing if I have a piece that's long enough. You can piece them together. They don't have to be all one continuous piece, but since I have a piece big enough, we'll do that. So here's the quilt batting. I just had this in my stash for a long time. I don't even remember what project I got it for. Probably table runners. I made some table runners a while ago. So I'm just going to lay this on the quilt batting. And I am not a precision seamstress or by any means or anything like that, which is why I am not a quilter. I think that piece fell off right there. So I could use a rotary cutter and mat, but maybe it's too much work to get it out. So I am just going to cut around the piece that I have laid on the batting. You do this any way you feel like you need to. Measure it, use your ruler and rotary cutter, whatever you need to do. I want to see something. I pinned this into the batting. Okay, they're pretty good. I thought that one end looked narrower than the other, but they're even, so we're good. So I'm going to put this back on here. I'm not pinning it down at this point. I would have had this sewn together and all the pins removed. And now I just need to put some kind of fabric on the back of the batting. Trimming off some of the exposed edges of the batting. Some sheets here. Let's find one that will go with the colors that we have. This pillowcase that I used is very stained in parts. That one's a good one. We could put two together. And use fabric too, it doesn't have to be sheet. This is big enough for the whole thing, so let's just make it easy and do that. And I'm just going to do the same thing, except, yeah, make sure that the right side is going to be facing that way. Because I'm going to zigzag around the edges. I'm not sewing it right sides together and turning it right side out. I'm just zigzagging. And you could, if you wanted to, take a bias tape or create your own fabric bias tape and sew that around the edges, but you'd have to miter the corners. It would be a nice, neat look, but this is a junk journal, even though it's made with pretty laces and embroidered pieces, and I want it to look pretty, but it is a junk journal, so I don't mind having kind of messy, zigzagged edges. So if this was all sewn together, I would now pin all 3 of these layers together, and then I would zigzag all the way around it, and then I would turn it over and zigzag again on this side just to make sure I catch all of the edges. So I need to make sure the back is caught in too. So that's what I did with this one. I sewed it on the front, and then I turned it over and sewed it on the back. And you can see the edges are not refined. There's a little bit of fraying, but I like that. This is a finished edge on a handkerchief, but the muslin underneath is fraying, and the muslin is sticking out between the layers in a couple of places. So it's just a nice organic look. So then what I have to do now with this one is to sew down all the layers, then pin it to the muslin and the sheet and zigzag all the way around, and then I have to get a strip of fabric and sew it to the back somewhere so that it will wrap around. And then I can do all of that with this one. Then I'll have my 3 covers. And these are both smaller than the first one, which is a good thing. So I hope you found this helpful. I hope you understood everything I was talking about. So if I do make any more covers to sell, I could use this one and this one. I think this one would make another very large journal, unless I cut it here, which I could do. So these are all linens that I could use to make some covers to sell. So I'm going to go do some appliquing and zigzagging and have fun with this. And I hope you all have a wonderful Sunday and stay safe and healthy, and I will be seeing you in the next video. Bye-bye.